Welcome to The Point of View, and this is part of our special series we've been running for the past couple of weeks on this global pandemic that's ravaging lives across the globe. My name is Bernard Abler. The Point of View is your favorite current affairs show on television. We bring you the right guests. We ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. And today's show is going to be interesting because I am going to 4 countries across 2 continents, and I'll be connecting with all of them while I sit here in the spirit of social distancing. You're going to have an exciting show. I'll tell you who my guests are when we come back. If you want to contribute to the show, there's a WhatsApp number on the screen. Please send us your comments. If you're watching on Facebook or any of the social media platforms, please feel free to send your comments. We'll read them during the show and also put them on the screen. Stay with us. So COVID-19 is now the biggest story in the world. Some people say it's the most devastating plague that has crippled the world's economy already, even before the final outlook is seen. It's the biggest hit we've seen since World War II. Tonight, we're going to be discussing lockdowns because Ghana's lockdown began in Accra at 1 a.m. today, 30th of March. We're taking you to the center of COVID-19 initially when it broke out. This is Wuhan in Hubei province in China. We'll also go to Daegu, South Korea, where we had a very serious case that spread before it was brought under control. We'll take you to Nairobi, Kenya, and we'll take you to Johannesburg, South Africa. So we're trying to compare how the lockdowns were done in those 4 places with some 4 very interesting people. And would also then take your views on how you're coping with the lockdown. But I thought it would be nice to show you some of our lovely photos and videos of what we saw today in town. I'll show you some of them. Yes, so Accra, Kasua, Tema, and Kumasi are the 4 main areas for lockdown. Very, very empty indeed. And this is at dawn. So right from 5 a.m., it was very clear that the normal rush that you'd see coming to town was absent. In fact, we have a nice story that says there were more padlocks than people in parts of Accra's business areas as Ghana's 2-week partial lockdown began. And this is getting towards Nkrumah Circle. Places like Kantamanto Makola, which record brisk activity during normal business days, were virtually empty. For a large stretch, the area known for the sale of new and used clothes, shoes, bags, and others was deserted, save a solitary pharmacy. And the order was largely complied with, although there were some pockets of resistance. This is Accra Central proper. That's the lighthouse. This is the high street. And then all these places were deserted initially. There were pockets of resistance we'll show you later on. Places around Ewutu Senya, Gomua East, where some people said they had to move and cross and other things. The other big issue I will talk about briefly before we talk to my guests across the world is the effect of corona on our economy. Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta has been speaking in Parliament, and he's basically saying that the virus is going to cost us almost 10 billion cedis, 9.5 billion cedis, which is around 2.5% of our GDP. Now, the Finance Minister says Corona would introduce a fiscal gap of about 11.4 billion cedis. Now, think about all that the financial sector crisis has done to our economy. And think of what Corona is doing. This is a really serious situation we're in. But and there you have him. Let me just give you the story. So the novel coronavirus pandemic is set to cost Ghana 9.5 billion cedis, according to Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta. This will be 2.5% on GDP. Speaker, the total estimated fiscal impact from the shortfall in petroleum receipts, shortfall, import duties, in other taxes, the cost of preparedness plan, coronavirus alleviation program is 9.5 billion cedis. He said when he appeared in Parliament today, ultimately a fiscal gap of 11.4 billion cedis. And then he gives the details. He said a preliminary analysis of the impact of the virus on the real sector shows that the 2020 projected real GDP growth could decline from 8% to 2.5%. This is serious. Now, if you read The Economist, if you read Bloomberg, they all projected that Ghana's economy was going to grow around 8%. Now it will be cut to 2.5%. That's very, very, very serious. So in subsequent programs, we'll talk about this. But in all the gloom and doom, Ghana's president seems to be shining. Part of his speech has become the toast of world commentators. So the president said to us that we should stay home, because even though the economy will take a hit, we know how to bring the economy back to life. What we do not know how to do is to bring people back to life. That was quite profound. The WHO Director General quoted this tweet and commended our president. Controversial Piers Morgan on Good Morning Britain also spent a few minutes chastising Western leaders for not being as clear as Ghana's eloquent president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. He has the gift of the gab. So that's by way of introduction. So who am I going to be speaking to this evening? I'm going to first connect with three people. I'll be going to South Korea, and I was speaking to a Ghanaian who's been living there for quite a while. He's a trade liaison officer for a company based in Daegu. Now, Daegu in South Korea was the epicenter of the virus when it initially started. South Korea has 9,661 cases. 158 people have died. So for South Korea's number of cases, the death rate is pretty low. There are 5,228 active cases. So my first guest I'll connect to, I'm using Zoom to connect with three of them at the same time. I'm going to connect to Richard Zinleri. I'm also going to go to Wuhan in Hubei province. Hubei province has 67,801 cases, and Wuhan particularly, the epicenter initially, went on lockdown from 23rd January. And as we speak, 30th March, they are still on lockdown. Baba Musa is a PhD student in engineering and environmental studies. He also joined the Zoom conversation I'm going to connect to shortly, telling us how he's been in his room. He apparently came out of his room only twice, or came out of his apartment only twice between 23rd January and today. How he keeps his sanity, I don't know. And then I'll go to Nairobi as well, because I'm going to join the editor for East Africa and Francophone Africa of a very interesting news organization called The Conversation. The Conversation tries to create journalistic stories out of research work. And Moina Spooner is the editor for East Africa and Francophone Africa. So I'm going to speak to the three of them on how they're dealing with lockdown in South Korea, in China, and also in in Ghana. And then I'll connect later on in Kenya, forgive me. And then I'll connect later on to South Africa. I'll be speaking to Dr. Josephine Ochre-Daku. She's Ghanaian born, she's a clinician, and she'll be telling us how the lockdown in South Africa is also going down. But that's later on during the interview. But those of you who are watching me in Ghana, whether you are in Tema or Kumasi, Greater Kumasi, or in Kasua, how have you been affected by the lockdown? Let me show you a few more images of the lockdown before we connect to our guests in South Korea, China, and also in Kenya. So this is a drone shot of Nkrumah Circle. Now, in that circumference, usually will be full of cars on your left. All the cars are gone. This is Nkrumah Circle. So this is Mo Shatta, our expert what's the word for it? Dronologist, drone pilot. There's the GCB. That's the pedestrians mall. So this is the busiest bus terminal in Ghana. For those of you watching internationally, the busiest bus terminal is empty. So the lockdown was largely complied with, and this was taken around midday by Philip Kofi Ashon. So it was a pretty empty town. Whilst you enjoy the sounds, let me see if I have my connection with... yes, let me see if I have my connection. So we're connecting with South Korea, China, and Kenya. So we'll be checking out lockdown stories from various parts of the world, and today we're starting off with Kenya. we've heard that that country has recorded its first death from COVID-19, and they've also imposed some sort of lockdown. I'll be joined by the East Africa editor of The Conversation, a very interesting organization that brings research and journalism together. Moina Spooner is the editor, East Africa editor for The Conversation. Moina, great to have you on.
Thank you very much for having me.
How is Kenya this morning?
Kenya's doing well today. Well, we've now been in a state of a somewhat lockdown, not really a lockdown. We've had a curfew that's been imposed since Friday evening now. So we are closed for business from 7 p.m. till 5 a.m. Only a few select people are allowed to move around at those times. Also today we've announced that we've got 50 cases of coronaviruses. That's 50 cases since our first case was announced on March 13th. And now they're saying that there's also community transmission, which means that it's not just foreigners that have been bringing it in, it's also been spreading locally.
Wow, that's serious. So when the government announced the restrictions, is it a full lockdown like we had, say, in Wuhan, or can you describe how this works in practice?
No, it's not at all. So we have a very large informal sector in Kenya. About 80% of the population is employed in the informal sector. And I think the reason the government hasn't done a full lockdown like it has in other parts of the world is because of that. So what we have at the moment is the government has asked various businesses and institutions to allow their employees to work from home. That's to encourage something called social distancing, which we've heard about everywhere, to ensure that people are staying away from each other as much as possible, to try to reduce the spread of the virus. What we do have is a curfew in place. So the curfew is in place from 7 p.m. till 5 a.m. and nobody's meant to be out at that time. We've had a very harsh reaction the first day it was imposed, the security forces cracked down quite hard on people. Very upsetting images coming from that. So we're only hoping that more restrained use of force is used, if any. But that's pretty much what we have at the moment. A lot of our supermarkets have now gone online, so people who can afford to shop online are able to do that. And within those supermarkets, they're also imposing social distancing. But it's not what you're seeing in places like South Africa. For instance, in South Africa, you're not even allowed to leave your house. Here we can still leave the house. There are still a few cars driving around on the road. And in our public transport vehicles, they're limiting the number of people that can go in them and so forth.
So, stay on. Let me just swing into China, South Korea, and then come back to you shortly. I have Baba Musa, who's in Wuhan, which is the epicenter of the initial outbreak. Baba, you're still in Wuhan?
Yes, Bernard.
Wow. So are you still in lockdown, or have the restrictions eased?
Thank you very much, Bernard. As we speak now, Wuhan is still in a lockdown. But however, there have been some relaxation, or if you like, the restrictions have been eased a little bit, but we are still indoors here in Wuhan.
So this is from 23rd January?
Precisely, 23rd January to 30th March as we speak now. Wuhan is still in a lockdown. But we have gotten information that on the 8th of April, that is next month, the government is going to give opportunity to outbound travelers, people who intend to travel outside Wuhan, to have opportunity to travel outside Wuhan. But that will not be done on a mass scale. The government has indicated that people will be given green card, that is clearance from the Chinese Health Authority. If you are clear that you are fit to go, then you have opportunity to travel outside Wuhan, starting from the 8th of April.
Okay, so before the easing, during the lockdown, could you come out of your house? Could you go buy food? Or did you have to stay indoors for food to be brought to you?
Thank you very much. You know, as you may be aware, the lockdown was announced on the 23rd of January. So immediately the lockdown was announced, by 10 a.m., all public transportation, that is buses, taxis, the sub-metro, and flights were all grounded in the city of Wuhan. And adjoining additional cities in the Hubei province. So during the first week of the lockdown, we could still go out to buy some foodstuffs, but one needed to put on masks. But after the first week of the lockdown, more tighter restrictions were imposed, so it became virtually impossible to go out. So the second week, we were still allowed to go out, but with restrictions again. So as I speak to you now, I can tell you confidently that between January 23rd today, March 30th, I had opportunity to go out of my hostel just twice, on the 28th of January and on the 7th of February. Wow. I haven't been able to get out of my hostel as I speak to you now.
Wow. Let me bring in Richard Zinleri. He's a foreign trade liaison officer. He works in South Korea, precisely Daegu. Richard, great to have you.
Okay, thank you for having me, Mr. Bennett, and greetings to all Ghanaians. And here in South Korea, the whole issue began on 20th of January, when the first case was recorded. So right around the second week of February, there was a partial lockdown declared by the Korean government authorities, most especially those of us in Daegu and the North Gyeongsang province. We were on a partial lockdown, so schools were closed from elementary school levels to the university levels. They had to close, and those at the universities and colleges had to do online lessons. And restaurants were also closed down, so you cannot even go out to get some food for yourself. And if you're lucky enough to find one restaurant operating, that restaurant operated in a very restricted manner. You cannot sit in at the restaurant to kind of take your food. You'd have to take it out. And if you happen to go to the bus station, the buses have disinfectants right at the entry point of the bus. So before you even embark on the bus, you have to apply the disinfectant, alcoholic hand sanitizers before you get in there. So it was a partial shutdown. It wasn't like a total shutdown, restricted movement. And when you go on the streets, it looked almost like a ghost town. Daegu is really a colorful town with about 2.5 million population. But when this whole issue happened, there was a shutdown. You barely see people on the streets. And if you chance upon anyone walking around, they are in nose masks, covered their faces with gloves and being cautious. So it was really much of a nightmare. But on the third week of February, things began to ease down. You see people coming out and you see a few restaurants reopening. But as I speak with you today, we are the last week of March, and South Korea has recorded about 9,661 cases with 50% recovery rates. And I must commend the Korean government authorities. They were very strict, and they've done a very excellent job in the way and manner they contained the whole issue. And we haven't also heard of any foreigner being infected yet, not even a Ghanaian being infected or reported to have been infected by the COVID-19. So this has been the situation here in Korea. We are just praying that the shutdown wouldn't go beyond April, because businesses has been very slow. We bring in used cars from Korea to Ghana. These are on the slow side, so we're just praying and hoping that we would fully bounce back, to the normal days,
Okay. Hold on a second. Let me now bring in Moina again. Moina, listening to what happened in China and what's happening in Korea, obviously this is impossible in Kenya. I mean, Baba says he's been in his room. He came out twice, and theirs lasted over a month and a half. This is impossible in Kenya, right?
Yes, very much so. I mean, in our case, it would, a lot of people in the country survive on hand to mouth. They survive on a daily income, which means that locking down the country, a lot of people would struggle immensely, which is one of the reasons why we've not been able to implement it here. I'm one of the very privileged few that's able to stay at home and work from home and shop online. But for a lot of people, the reality is their days have to keep going. Otherwise, the fallout from that could be far more severe.
I see. What else has the president of Kenya announced? Is there some sort of relief package? How are they trying to compensate for what's going to happen with COVID-19?
Yes, there have been several economic measures that have been taken to sort of cushion the economic blow. They've introduced certain packages to support vulnerable groups. They've reduced taxes, although some people argue that there should have been more tax exemptions in place. But unfortunately, this has come at a time where our economy's not been doing very well. We've got a public debt burden of about $60 billion at the moment. So it's going to take us a long time to recover from this. And in addition to that, because so many of the businesses have sent people home, and because so many of the businesses are struggling, a lot of people have been forced to go on unpaid leave, for instance. A lot of people are losing their jobs. And our labor laws here aren't as heeded to as they are in the West, which means a lot more people will suffer.
Okay, let me go back to China. So, Baba, it would appear as though China is turning a corner. For a few days, you haven't had any local transmissions. And it looks like, in terms of the rankings globally, the US has more cases, Italy has more cases than China. What is local media saying about COVID-19? Are they seeing that China is returning to normalcy, or is it still a big issue in China as we speak? Okay, Baba, we seem to have a weak connection with you. So just hold on there, and let me connect to Richard in South Korea, and I'll come back to you, Baba. Richard, if you can hear me.
Yes, Bernard.
Yes, it would seem as if South Korea combined social distancing stroke restrictions with a rigorous testing regime. Talk to me about that model briefly, and how flat is your curve now? Because for a lot of countries, they're still yet to get to the top of their curve. How is the situation in South Korea as far as treatment, infections, and new cases are concerned?
To be very honest with you, Bernard, South Korea has really done an excellent job. And since the outbreak, the government's response was super swift. And as you already may have known, that there is this church called the Shincheonji Church of Jesus Christ. That church alone infected about 50% of the entire country's infection rate. So the Korean government was swift enough and then got the entire data of the church members. They traced, tracked them down, separated them from those infected and not affected. And then places they happen to have gone, they traced all those paths. Places they have contacted, they made sure they tested all those people. And the testing is for free. And even Daegu, as I speak with you now, was declared a disaster zone. So the Korean parliament had kind of an economic relief package for that province, so that it would help ease the economic, situation over there. And those of us foreigners and other individuals, if you happen to have the symptoms and you go to the hospital to test and you are positive, it's for free. The government take care of it for you for free of charge until you recover and go back home. And Koreans who happen to have been affected by this case are also provided with funds, okay? They pay money into their bank accounts so that they could use it to take care of themselves. And millions of masks were distributed free of charge. Even with the foreigners, you could walk to any of the city halls. The city hall is just like what we have in Ghana called the district assemblies. You walk to any district assembly, what we call city hall here in Korea, you show an ID, they provide you with disinfectant for free, they provide you the mask and the gloves and all that you need. And testing is for free. But if you test negative, then you have to pay. But if you test positive, you don't have to pay a penny. And the other good thing too is that there are new cases of imported cases, like people from Europe and Africa and all over the world coming in now. As of this week, they are bringing in new numbers. So today they recorded about 78 people, new infected persons. So the new policy is that when you get to the airport and you are being checked, the government would force you, it's mandatory, that you download an app onto your phone. And that app is a tracker. So when you leave, you are told to go into a mandatory 14 days self-quarantine. So that app monitors you. If you leave your house, they know your location, they will come for you. You can be deported or you could be jailed for about 1 year. So all these measures put in place by the government has really ensured that the thing is well contained. And the wonderful thing is, I wonder how the health experts within South Korea are able to put things together to have a 50% recovery rate. So I was hoping that for the efforts of the Ghanaian president, he's given about the fourth addresses this outbreak in Ghana. And the Ghanaian health practitioners are doing all their best to make sure that Ghanaians get well treated. I think they should take a cue from the South Korean case, get some resources, tap into their knowledge, how they have been able to have 50% recovery rate. We should learn from them, use any other means, be in a diplomatic channel, what have you, so that we can also continue the situation back home in Ghana.
Right. Miona, let me ask you my final question to you. In Ghana, many people don't seem to see how serious this is, because we've had people still go to the beach, people rush to the market on Saturday, social distancing is not being adhered to as religiously as it ought, because the cases are still very low. You said Kenya has 50 cases now with 1 death, and there's also a horizontal infection. Is the general population apprehensive? Or if you talk to ordinary Kenyans, what are they saying about COVID-19?
I think it's being taken a lot more seriously here. You're seeing a lot more hand washing stations show up. There's a lot of community initiatives as well to support vulnerable communities. A lot of people are recognizing the severity of the situation. If you go into a supermarket, people will be wearing masks, everyone will be sanitized on the way in, they'll have hand sanitizers as well. So people are taking it very, very seriously here. I think it's more that those who can't afford to cannot, and those are people who can't afford, for instance, to buy enough water on a daily basis because they don't have pipe water to their house. These are some of the realities that we're grappling with on the ground. But for everyone who can afford to take precautions, I do think a lot of people do heed the warning. There are definitely those in society that don't, which is one of the reasons I feel the curfew is imposed, because when it came to social distancing at night, we have a very big drinking culture, very big social culture here as well, so a lot of people were still doing that. But now I think a lot more people are taking it a lot more seriously. And if you go to someone's house in the evening, you won't be allowed to leave until 5 a.m. So so because of that, it's enforcing it a lot more, which is good. For us, if we go shopping, we're very careful to the extent that we will actually wear gloves, we'll wear masks, all the fruits and vegetables that come in get disinfected, everything that comes in gets sprayed with alcohol. You cannot take this seriously enough. You may not show the symptoms, you may pass it on to other people, you may be infecting lots of people who are vulnerable. People like me who've got chronic asthma, my father who's just recovered from pneumonia. These are all people which are vulnerable communities in society. And we're also seeing cases elsewhere where healthy people are also getting very, very sick. So it's just best for everyone just to do this as a communal effort out of respect for each other, out of respect for your neighbor, your friends, just to stay home for as long as it needs. Keep your distance. That's at least 6 feet, even if you do need to hang out with them.
Okay. Before you go, the COVID-19 is an interesting story from the journalistic perspective and also from the scientific perspective. And I know the conversation tries to marry the two. How are you at the conversation treating COVID-19, making use of great journalism and also good academic research, finally?
I mean, it's absolutely, it's a brilliant time for all sorts of academics to shine. People whose work has often been sidelined and not brought to the forefront, they finally have a voice to share the work that they've been doing. And we have some brilliant academics on the continent who've been doing this, people who can now finally have their voice and have their say. And also because we've been dealing with so many pandemics of our own, they're able to come to the forefront. So what we do at The Conversation is we give those individuals a platform. Us as editors, we work with them to shape the article for the general public, and it's been fantastic. I mean, our numbers have doubled in terms of readership because so many people are looking to consume this information, and it's incredibly valuable information direct from the source that health authorities are trying to put in place. So we take our role very, very seriously in this, and we're very grateful to the academics who can help us make it happen.
Thank you. Moina Spooner is the East Africa editor of The Conversation. You may leave us now, but I'm still with Baba Musa, who's a Ghanaian who's based in Wuhan, China. I also have Richard Zinleri, who's a Ghanaian businessman. He's based in Daegu, South Korea. Baba, so I hope our line is better now. I was asking whether life in China has returned back to normal, and also what are the Chinese authorities saying? Because we read a few stories about how China was racking up the export of face masks, and they seem to be now benefiting from the lessons they have learned from COVID-19. So give me a quick overview of the China situation, Baba.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, as I was saying, as of yesterday, official information from the Chinese government indicates that 31 cases were reported, and out of that, 30 of them were imported cases. So only one local infection, that is one case within mainland China, was recorded. And as a result of that, the Chinese government has now tightened up these visa restrictions. As you may be aware, starting from the 28th, 2 days ago, China has suspended all visa entries into China. And I think that is a good measure, because as we speak now, imported cases in China have risen to 723. So clearly, if the Chinese government hadn't taken this measure, it will be clear that the cases would have gotten to another high level.
So we seem to have a dodgy internet from Baba. We'll try and re-establish the connection. I was going to ask both Baba and Francis and Richard. I know both of them follow Ghana issues quite closely, because both of them listen to my show on radio, and sometimes I hear from them. So I was going to ask them what they thought of what's happening in Ghana currently. So whilst I try and establish Baba connection, let me ask Richard. So Richard, every now and again, I notice you listen to radio in Ghana, you follow what we do. What is your impression
of the breakfast show?
Exactly. Being a Ghanaian living in South Korea within these difficult times, what's the feeling like, and what do you make of the way Ghana has responded to this?
First of all, Ghanaians in South Korea felt very, very comfortable and confident in the Korean authorities and their way of doing things, because the way and manner they contained it gave everybody a sense of relief. So we didn't have an interest of even trying to come back home because of this outbreak, because we knew where we are, things have been well taken care of. But what we feared and prayed for is that this shouldn't get to our shores, to Madagascar. And then, lo and behold, it has gotten to Ghana. But we've also had some sense of relief in the leadership we have seen the current president portraying in the country. Because here in South Korea, when you are a foreigner, you get to the country and you are kind of seen to be infected at the airport level. If you happen not to have a residence yet, you are put in a facility that you have to pay by yourself. But in the case of our Ghana, the Ghanaian government is taking care of those being hosted by the Ghana quarantine facility. The Ghanaian authority pays for it. So this is something we heard of that made us feel also some sense of proud. Then also, we also compared the citizenship. In these times, matured citizenship must be displayed by all, which was very evident in the Korean case. And not to speak bad of Ghana, but in our case, there are people who might try to go contrary to the measures being declared by the president, which was another fear factor. So we only pray and hope that our Ghana, especially citizens, would listen for the first time, listen to the president, stay at home, be calm, and then even if you are kind of denied your profit-making venture for the day, just eat some food and stay home for the 14 days being declared, because this is a serious case and it's spreading like wildfire. We shouldn't wait for thousands of people, just like the Italian case, before we realize this is serious. They should please listen for the first time. Then to multinational companies in Ghana who makes huge profits, this is the time to come to the need of the nation. I don't want to mention names of companies, but Ghanaians should watch closely. Companies that do not show any kind of assistance or help, Ghanaians should think twice about patronage.
Okay.
These companies, the rich people in the country, this is the time to come to the forefront.
This is the time to step up.
Their resources help.
Amazing.
That's right.
But I'll say a big thank you to Baba Musa, who's a a researcher. He's based in China, and Richard Zinleri. So Baba is actually in Wuhan. He's been indoors since 23rd January. Richard Zinleri is a trade liaison officer. He's in Daegu, South Korea, which was also a hardly hit part of South Korea. Earlier on, we spoke to Miona Spooner, East Africa editor of The Conversation. We'll be back with more. This is The Point of View. Stay with us.
They tell me I'm just a whiskey, but I'm more than that. I'm a blend. Born from the finest single malts and grains, blended to be smooth with a warm amber glow. Admired by men and women all over the world. I'm not one of these things. I'm all of these things. Mellow, rich and generous. Because blended is better in life and in Scotch. Chivas, blended Scotch whiskey.
Drink responsibly, not for sale to persons under 18 years of age, not recommended for pregnant women. This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
Welcome back. We're still on The Point of View. After that quick trip to South Korea, China, and Kenya, let me read a few of your messages before I go to South Africa, because I have Dr. Josephine Otchere-Darko. She's a clinician. She's a Ghana-born. She's living in South Africa for many years. We'll talk to her about what's happening in South Africa as well. But good evening, Bernard. I think the government should at least help the informal citizens with an amount of money, or use NADMO to distribute foodstuffs to the vulnerable citizens. It's mandatory for the COVID-19. It's about the citizens of this country. It doesn't know the rich or poor. This is from Soba in Kasua. Edem has a long one. I kindly plead with authorities enforcing the lockdown to use force. Not to use force, but be professional, because I had one AMA city guard in the news saying they have in hand chains or canes to beat up people who are seen moving around. They should understand that people at some point in time may be forced to come out to buy food, medicine, or airtime. Enforcing a lockdown is very important, but the approach is also important. Good evening, Bernard. Looking at how astronomically the cases have risen in Tamale with the influx of returnees from the south is scary. If we live in this without being in lockdown as we speak, I don't know those who are involved in the contact tracing and who they may have also infected. So the lockdown should have been nationwide instead of being limited to Accra and Kumasi alone. Councillor Beckson, listen attentively to Richard from South Korea. It was a very wise decision for the president to ban all church and other religious activities, because it would have been very disastrous, you say. Alex in Takrady, Bernard, there are people moving from cities of Kumasi and Accra and Tema to other parts of the country. Is this safe for us? Alex is asking. KK from WA says, as we go on this partial lockdown, I believe we are overcrowding in most of our households and settlements. Let's take note of CSM, and I'm sure it will be an issue to grapple with. So do we have Josephine? Okay, so Dr. Josephine Otchere-Darko is a clinician based in South Africa. Let's pick her brain on the lockdown, because indeed South Africa has been in lockdown as well for a few days now. So let's talk to her. We're now checking out the situation in South Africa. We already took you to South Korea, we did China, and we did Kenya. We're going to talk to Dr. Josephine Otchere-Darko. She's a medical doctor, but she's also based in South Africa. And they are in the lockdown that was declared by President Cyril Ramaphosa. We'll find out from her how it's going in South Africa, and also the concerns about the way COVID-19 is moving there. Doc, thanks for joining us on The Point of View. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Great. How is it Joburg that you're in?
Yes, Joburg. We are in Johannesburg, yes.
How is Joburg as we speak?
Joburg is very quiet. The streets are empty, most of the streets, but mostly in the suburbs. Okay, so the suburbs, the streets are empty, people are complying, they're in the houses, but in the townships, I mean, I went there today to the clinics. It's kind of business as usual. People are still in the streets.
Wow.
You know, people are trading. just minding their own business. It's not as busy as it used to be, but there are still people out there. It's not full lockdown in the townships, but in the suburbs, it's going quite well. So yeah, it is half and half.
So the lockdown was it Friday? And when it was announced, was there some sort of scramble? Because here in Ghana, when the lockdown was announced, we had a 2-day window to prepare. So there was a lot of scramble. People were going to buy food. Some people wanted to leave town. How was your countdown to lockdown in South Africa?
Yeah, so ours was also announced on Monday. And yes, there was a lot of panic buying. There were actually before it was announced, people just started panic buying. I think a week before that, there were long queues in big shops, you know, like Makro. We have a shop that's called Makro that sells wholesale. So they wiped it out. The shelves were empty.
Wow.
Even before there was the announcement. So when the announcement took place on Monday, there were a lot of panic buying. And actually, even yesterday and the day before, Saturday and Friday, there was still panic buying because most people were paid on Thursday and Friday. So some people work weeks and they get paid at the end of the week.
Wow.
So some were paid on Friday and they still went out, even though there was a lockdown. They still had to go out and buy food. And there were queues in a lot of supermarkets.
Wow.
So there has been scramble all over.
But how do South Africans shop? So is it that for the townships, they buy from normal corner shops and then from the suburbs, they go to the supermarkets, or everybody shops from the supermarket?
So in the suburbs, there are those supermarkets that are the franchises that people buy from. But in the townships, they do have the spaza shop. We call them the spaza shop. Those are the corner small shops, right? The supermarkets. But they still go to town. So the CBD, downtown, where they have cheaper supermarkets. So not the franchises, but privately owned supermarkets. And that's where they buy their bulk food, because that's where they can afford. So for day-to-day kind of buying bread, buying, you know, the consumables, they go to the corner shops. But to buy bulk, they go to town, which has much cheaper wholesale retailers and wholesalers that they can afford. Yeah.
Amazing. So just give me a quick idea of how COVID-19 has become a big story. So in Ghana, sometime February, it was like, well, something is happening in China. Then it was in Italy. But for the past couple of weeks, it's become very serious, and it's become the only story here. How has it evolved in South Africa as a story?
So ours started, I think, probably 2-3 weeks ago when we had our first case. But actually before that, there was already that social media, you know, panic going around Corona. A month ago, we were just hearing about it in China. I think just like Ghana context, you know, China, where, you know, Wuhan, we had a lot of migrants at Wuhan, and you know, we would just see on TV, there's a problem with Wuhan, but it never really hit home until like 3 weeks ago when social media actually started making it very big, and it was really scaring people. Then when we had our first case, oh my goodness, I think that's when it got home. Wow. And that's when the panic actually started even more. So yeah, it started about 2-3 weeks ago, and since then it hasn't stopped. It really hasn't. So it's just been panic all over. And
I think your case count, South Africa, is the highest in Africa, if I'm not mistaken. I think Egypt
Definitely
is. How is that going down? Is it that because you have better testing systems, you're able to get more cases, or is it because of your exposure to China and the other places? Because I mean, in Ghana, the cases are still in the hundreds, 152 as I speak to you. I think you guys are getting close to how much? 700? What's the figure there now?
No, we are about 1,000 now. Yesterday we were at 1,187.
Wow.
And if you look at the stats, we've done about 31,000 tests. Wow. And out of that, we've got 1,100 cases. So you can see it is mostly based on the fact that we do have the resources to test. We've got the test kits. We haven't run out as yet. And actually, from today, the president has asked the funders, the U.S. government, to assist with door-to-door screening and possibly testing. So, the resources are there. And I think the more tests we do, the more cases we pick up, as opposed to other countries where if you don't have the tests and the ability to screen, you really can't pick up the cases until, they resolve or recover.
Initially, when our cases started, we were looking at imported cases. The horizontal infections hadn't started, and people were really hoping that by closing the borders will contain that. Now we do have some domestic transfers. What's the situation looking like at your end? Is it a lot of domestic or is still a lot of imported?
Okay, so for us now, the borders are also closed. They've actually been closed for a while. So we're seeing a lot more local. The imported ones are not. They actually stopped about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. So we're having more of the local infections. I think 90% of the infections that we have now are local infections because we haven't had tourists coming in anymore. We've closed the borders. And so it's Western Cape, for example. They have had quite a lot of cases in Gauteng, where we are. We've had quite a lot of cases, and most of them are local cases. And so it is kind of spreading fast.
And are these local more like suburb kind of places or township kind of places?
It's interesting because it is actually the suburbs. We're actually talking about it at work today, and the townships, we can count the number of cases in the townships, in the informal settlements where we thought it would probably spiral out. But it seems like it's more the affluent people that are getting it. And perhaps it could be exposure to tourists, exposure to, corporate world, people who have traveled. Like some of the doctors, my colleagues who got it, they recently came from overseas, and then they started showing symptoms a week or two later. So it seems like I was saying today at work, it seems like it's the disease of the affluent. It's not necessarily a disease of the lower. It seems like not. And when you hear the comments from the lower class people here, they're like, people are, we've never traveled, and you hear, we're sitting in our township, and these rich people are bringing this corona to us. So there is that perception also.
I see.
But if you look at the stats, it's like that,
But there is a fear here that in Ghana, because a lot of poor people may either not go to a hospital or usually just self-medicate, we may be underreporting the case among the poorer populations. I mean, you work in the health sector. You just mentioned that you actually work in the township. So it means that you're in a health facility in the townships. I don't know what kind of health system you people have. How easy is it for people to go and say, look, I don't feel well, check me out, or I don't feel well, test me for corona?
It's fairly simple because remember we have a very high case of TB. So those screening questions are standard in all our consultations. So, and those questions are similar to the corona questions. I mean, fever, coughing, so we are picking them up as quickly as we can in our context because of the TB pandemic. So we're not missing the informal settlement cases. Perhaps, like you're saying, there may be some who will go to the nearest facility, chemists and buy flu things. But because we have such a high HIV burden, most people do access the facilities, the clinics for one way or the other. And when we're screening them at the gate, at the door, we're getting people out. The good thing is we haven't really picked up a lot. I mean, I can count the number of cases that we picked up from our clinics, and our head count at our clinics are very high. So the head count at the clinics are very, very high. Oh. So I wouldn't really say right now that it's probably due to self-medication, and that's why we're missing the ones in the informal settlements. I just think that it's really still confined in that context that we just described. So the more middle class context based on the exposure, with the people that are from Europe, for example, But I really wouldn't say that we're missing the guys in the informal settlement, because when they get to the facilities, we do screen them quite vigorously, quite intensely.
I see. Here in Ghana, some of the health workers are concerned about their exposure to people when they go to the facilities. I don't know. You just told me you came from the hospital, and I know you have family. Aren't you concerned at all that in this season, what kind of protection is given to people who work in the medical facilities like you, do you sort of double down, face mask, protective gear, and all these things before you go close to any hospital at all?
Yeah. So what we using at the clinics are we all wearing face masks, and we're using sanitizers like every I don't know how many minutes.
Yeah, like this.
We're washing our you also have yours. We're washing our hands as often as we can. When you get into the clinic, the first thing you're going to do is have to see everybody is sanitizing their hands. Go, good. So everybody's having to sanitize their hands before they actually enter the clinics. And then we're all wearing masks, and we haven't gotten to the gear level as yet, because like I said, in the townships the cases haven't been huge. But in the hospital, I mean, just 2 days ago on Friday, we were told that one of our hospitals is going to be made COVID specific hospital in Pretoria. And I think that is where, in the hospital setting, is where they're going to wear the whole HAG mask, the whole gear, because the cases that we'll be seeing will be much more advanced cases. But the ones who are coming with the mild symptoms, usually just the face mask. We have an N95, which is a bit better than the surgical masks. And just that N95 usually is quite effective when it comes to protection. So regarding me being worried about getting it, to be honest, I'm not entirely worried at the moment. And I know it may be downplaying it a bit, but I think we've seen worse. And I'm maybe talking for other clinicians as well. We've seen worse. We are sitting with a high TB pandemic that we've been sitting with for years. I mean, if you do x-rays of even me, myself, you'll see TB in the x-ray. That is how high our TB rate is. So if we have been living through TB, for me, Corona, just wearing an N95 and just making sure you maintaining the hygiene, it probably has a much lesser transmission rate to me than TB. And for me, TB is more deadly. I will be very blank with you, because once you get it, it can really spiral down very quickly. Yes, Corona is also very deadly. It's highly transmissible, but I think the protection that we're getting right now for Corona will be okay in our context, especially in the informal settlement context.
So then it must be surprising the way governments all over the world are moving to close borders, to do lockdowns and all of this. I mean, because you're a clinician, TB is very dangerous in South Africa, but it appears everybody else is so scared of Corona that, I mean, do you think the lockdown, the border closures are a bit of a panic reaction, or you can understand why they would do what they're doing?
So you know what, it's a bit of both. Initially I was very pro. We've seen TB has killed millions of people, still is. It's just that it's got a cure. So once you get it, we know that we can give you this treatment and you probably get resolved. And the problem with the Corona is because the virus, and you kind of, there isn't a proven antiviral that can really cure it. And I think that's probably where the panic came through, and also the fact that it started in first world countries where they've never seen such things. You know what I mean? TB started in Africa. It started here, and it killed hundreds of people. But the panic wasn't as huge because I think it was more in our context, and we are used to these kind of infections and, all that. But for me, I think I wouldn't say the panic is unreasonable, because this thing is highly transmissible. I mean, anything airborne is highly transmissible. But if you are a clinician and you compare it to what TB did and what TB is still doing, you tend to start thinking, is it because of where it started? Number one, I think it has a big role with where it started, and those people, are not used to these kind of epidemics, But if you look at the South African context, where HIV has been here for so long and TB is still here, I mean, we see patients every day with TB, and and TB is actually airborne. Initially, Corona was seen to be droplets, which is less transmissible because I have to sneeze on you to get it. But TB, if you stand in front of me and you breathe, I get TB. You know what I mean? So I think it's more about the fact that we've been used to TB, and now it's in the back banner. And this thing started, and those countries are not used to respiratory illnesses that are very deadly, and it got a bit spiraled out. So I wouldn't say it was a overreaction. I think it was warranted, because it is killing, and one person dead is one too many.
Okay.
But I think it was a bit over.
I see. Final couple of questions. I know you're a family person, combining managing the home and working. How are you managing that? Because I know schools have closed as well, so it means the kids are home. I don't know whether you are having to homeschool them while you work as well, or whether there's some video conferencing or long distance kind of schooling. How is that whole thing going?
Yeah, so homeschooling is what all of us have been doing. Actually, we have been sent curriculums online, and that is what they actually gave them packets of work to do as well. So we have been homeschooling. It's going okay. It's difficult, I must say. It's not something that we used to, but it looks like it's doable. It's not something that it can't be done. Yeah.
I see. Some of my Ghanaian viewers are wondering why somebody called Josephine Otchere-Darko sounds so South African. Or, I mean, they can't discern your accent, actually. So how long have you been in South Africa, and are there any plans of coming back? Because we need as many health workers as we can in Ghana. What can I use to lure to bring you back to Ghana?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So, all right. So I've been here, 25 years now. It's from 1995. Yeah. So lure me back. Hey, it's going to take a lot, better.
1995? Wow. Yes. So you schooled there, you did your medicine in South Africa?
I did my medicine here. Yeah, I did my medicine here. So yeah, it's been some time, I must say.
Wow.
And yeah, it's an interesting context to work in. Very interesting, very, very
amazing. So, but I'm sure you're planning that your kids will come back home at some point. Your family will come back home at some point.
Yeah, it's always in that plan, because even my dad eventually went home. He's at home now, so it is always the final goal. I think that's what is in the back of everybody's mind. So yes, one day.
Finally, I notice you're very relaxed and bubbly. Probably because you're a medical practitioner, you've seen a lot of things in your life. What's your message to Ghanaians who are apprehensive about the way the world is reeling from COVID-19? Jobs are being lost, economies are being decimated, people are scared. You seem pretty relaxed. And I'm wondering, of course, probably because you know a lot about medicine, what do you have to say to Ghanaians right now?
I think what I've been living by is this too shall pass. I think,
Amen.
We've been through a lot of eras, a lot of phases. And I think for me, it's mainly because of the background. We had an HIV era that also has stabilized, So economically, I think, we've already seen, South African context, our economy is going down the drain. But I think that is something that we will pick up as we get there. It's a worry. I'm also very concerned because, developing countries, it's very difficult to come back fully, But I think let's just get this era through. Let's get it over and done with. Make sure that we are safe and everybody is well. Then we'll see the next phase as we get there. Really, there's nothing we can do besides ensuring that we are all well and alive at the end of this whole chaos.
Stay safe.
So hang in there.
Thank you.
This too shall pass.
Amen. Dr. Josephine Otchere-Darko, thank you for talking to us, and we'll talk to you again, of course, when it becomes necessary. Have a good one.
Thank you.
So that was Dr. Josephine Otchere-Darko. I like to say she's a Ghanaian. She's been in South Africa for 25 years, but we will claim our own. So they've seen AIDS, they've seen TB, and they're not too, well, she doesn't think that COVID-19 is as scary as a lot of people are making it out, although she admits that because there's no cure, it's going to be difficult. We'll be right back. This is still The Point of View. Stay with us. And special shouts to Asari Otredako. Don't forget, the name was Josephine Otredako. So thanks to Gabi. I'm sure you would have guessed that's Gabi's little sister speaking to us from South Africa. I can't read the rest of your messages, we run out of time, but I think we would use her words to encourage everybody. This too shall pass. That doesn't mean we should be reckless. Let's follow all the rules, but let's also believe. And as the president said, your front door is the barrier. Let's stay home. Let's stay safe. We'll come to you again next time. See you. Bye-bye. Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed this video on City TV's YouTube channel. Subscribe for more videos on The Point of View. My name is Bernard Avle. Thank you.
The Point of View with Bernard Avle. Monday and Wednesday nights, only on City TV.